Hello and welcome. Today we have a couple of interesting stories, including one about OP and whose family told him his 3 adopted kids don't qualify as grandkids of the family. Sit back, relax and enjoy. Am I the idiot for getting a man fired over my masculinity complex?
My girlfriend, 21F, and I, 20 male, work in the HQ of a fast food chain.
I work in finance and she works in IT. The office is connected to the restaurant, so most days we go there to eat dinner. Recently, a new guy, 17-ish male, started working in the restaurant. We'll call him John. John has a bit of a crush on my girlfriend. John impishly teases my girlfriend every time we come in to order food. His teasing, though, has a tendency to go too far. Here are a couple of things John does to flirt. Pretends not to see or hear my girlfriend when she goes to the register, refusing to take her order. She says, "Can I have a burger?" And he says, "No," and takes the order of the person next in line. Making her repeat her order up to 10 times, purposely getting her order wrong, charging her extra for things she didn't order, playing keep away with straws and receipts, and if she walks away he throws it at her, throwing sauce packets at her when she asks for. There are more, but these are the ones I can name off the top of my head. Keep in mind, he didn't do this to me or anyone else. My girlfriend is very non-confrontational and shy, so she usually just gives him an awkward laugh and brushes it off. At first I tried to gently tell him off, but she told me to stop and leave it be. She said he probably didn't know any better. So I did. I held my tongue as I watched my girlfriend get progressively more and more uncomfortable. So uncomfortable she started to bring snacks and skip dinner. She didn't ever want to go into the restaurant at all. On one of the rare afternoons she wanted to eat in the restaurant, John was there, being insufferable, as usual. After repeating her order several times and receiving the wrong drink, my girlfriend asked for a straw. John continued to tease her by moving the straw around so she couldn't grab it and laughing at her. It went on for so long that the man in line behind us stepped up to tell John off. This is where my masculinity complex may have come in. I felt so ashamed and embarrassed that another man had to step up and take care of my girlfriend when I was standing right there. The next day when we went to order food and John approached the register, I flagged down manager, who we are friends with, and asked that someone other than John our order. I explained the situation to the manager, and John was fired by the end of the week. My girlfriend is furious with me. She says it was selfish of me to get someone fired because I felt emasculated by some stranger in a fast food restaurant. That I used my position of power to get a kid who didn't know any better fired. I just feel pretty guilty about the whole thing. So, am I the idiot for getting a man fired over my masculinity complex? The top replies, "Not the idiot. I don't think this has anything to do with a masculinity complex. The kid was being a jerk, he absolutely does know better, and he was doing a bad job, wasting time and annoying customers. I'm a little concerned for your GF, being so non-confrontational that she couldn't tell this guy to knock it off and wouldn't even allow you to tell this guy to knock it off. We women are used to being socialized to always be polite, but she deserves better for herself." The second reply, original poster. I think the main takeaway here is that your girlfriend will not be able to fully function in the world without professional help. If you ever want to share a life with her, shared financial responsibilities, medical decisions, children, you need to make sure this is addressed, for both of your sake. Yes, women are socialized to never assert themselves and to let themselves be disrespected. She's sympathetic, but she still needs to recognize that she needs to be able to engage in confrontation when necessary to protect herself. It's great that she's compassionate about this kid, that she's cognizant of the power dynamics between 2 high-earning young professionals versus the service worker waiting on them, but if she's going to claim the kid didn't know any better, then she also needs to assume responsibility for his getting fired. Because she could have told him. If she truly believed this kid was innocently oblivious, instead of a malicious pervert who deserved to be fired, then the productive way to resolve it would be to tell him to stop. She didn't. She made the stakes of the confrontation much higher than they needed to be by degrading herself, to the point where she was so needlessly helpless that multiple other people felt they needed to intervene. And that was the chain of events that led to this kid being fired, as opposed to corrected. So if she feels he didn't deserve to be fired, she can't have it both ways. But her non-confrontation policy isn't rational, it's pathological. People are going to be harmed because of it. And, yes, you could put 100% of the blame for that on the person who is imposing on the other. But I think this is a good example of how her inability to assert herself like an adult makes a situation more difficult than it needs to be. Edit. I should note that I'm inclined to believe that John genuinely thought what he was doing was funny. He was never outright harsh with my girlfriend, he thought it was joke. He usually followed it with something like, "You gotta have fun where you can." Second story. Am I the idiot for canceling the plans for Thanksgiving after my parents called my brother's baby their first grandchild?
I, 32 female, have been with my wife Ava, 34 female, for 8 years now, but we've been married for 5. She was a single mom of 3 kids when we started dating. She had 2 daughters, now 10 and 12, and a son, now 16.
I've watched these kids grow up. I've read the bedtime stories, done bath time, the first days of school, PTA meetings, all of it. I very much consider them to be my kids, and they've been calling me mom for almost 6 years now. My brother Ivan, 28 male, just had a baby girl with his fiancée Sarah, 27 female. I love my niece, and my kids adore their cousin. My kids have been the only grandchildren on my side of the family since Ava and I got together, and there's never been a moment where the kids and my wife were treated like they didn't belong. My brother is their uncle, my mom and dad are their nana and pop. The kids see my family as their family, and I always thought that my family felt the same way about them. The kids and I were over at my brother's house just hanging out, and my parents ended up dropping by with gifts for my niece. Ivan laughed when he saw the toys and told our mom and dad that they were going to end up spoiling her rotten. My mom said since my niece is their first grandchild, of course they have to spoil her. My kids were sitting in the living room with all of us, and my youngest daughter looked hurt when she realized what my mother said. My son and my 12-year-old didn't fully react to it, but I could tell it bothered the both of them too. Sarah spoke up and said, "Oh, you mean first grandbaby, not first grandchild." My dad shook his head and replied that my niece was their first grandchild. I didn't want my kids to keep sitting there and listening to that, so I handed my son my keys and told him to wait in the car with his sisters. When they were gone, I asked my parents why the hell they'd say that my kids weren't their grandchildren, and my mom said they couldn't be their grandchildren because they weren't really my children. My wife and I were going to be hosting Thanksgiving at our house this year, but I told my parents that if they didn't view my kids as their family, then they could just host a meal at their own house with their real family while I spent the holiday with mine. I left before they could say anything else to me, and my wife and I have reiterated to the children that they will always be my kids and I will always be their other mom, regardless of our DNA. My brother is pissed at me now because he thinks I reacted too harshly, and that I should try to see where my parents are coming from. My mom texted saying that she and my dad love the kids, but they still aren't their grandchildren, and she hopes that we can come to understand that because she doesn't want this to ruin my niece's first Thanksgiving. I haven't replied back. I meant what I said, but I'm worried that maybe I'm reacting too harshly. The top replies, "Not the idiot. That was a really shitty thing of your parents to think, let alone say in front of your kids. You are completely justified in your reaction. If it were me, I don't know if it is something that could be fixed with a simple apology." The second reply, "The worst part of it for me is that they said it in front of them. I'd still be upset knowing they thought it, but the look on my youngest daughter's face when she heard my mother say that just broke my heart. I tend to go mama bear whenever I even think someone has stepped out of line with the kids, so I was worried that maybe I was doing too much in my reaction. My brother still feels like I should talk it out with them, but I don't know that I could forgive it honestly." Everyone is the idiot info. I adopted all 3 of the kids about 4 years ago, so they aren't just my parents' step-grandchildren. Even if I hadn't legally adopted them, they'd still be my kids in my eyes. Edit number 2. My wife's parents don't have a relationship with the kids. When my wife came out, they pretty much stopped speaking with her entirely. Their bio dad is not involved and neither is his family. He lost his rights to the children before Ava and I started dating. The 10-yo has never met him, the 12-yo doesn't remember him, and the 16-yo wants nothing to do with him. My parents wanted the kids to call them Nana and Pop. I didn't make the kids start calling them that. Third story. Am I the idiot for leaving after being told to be quiet at dinner? The title probably makes it sound worse than it was, but I'm still conflicted. My, female 21, boyfriend, male 24, of almost a year, invited me to dinner with his family. Mom, dad, and his 16-year-old brother. Never met them prior to that. The only thing I knew about them is that they're conservative and Christians but lovely people. I got along really well with them. Before dinner, they were lovely and talkative. When it was time for dinner, my BFF's dad wanted to pray. After praying he said something along the lines of, "Let us dig and let the food keep us quiet." This is a pretty popular saying in our country, mostly told to young children in school.
My understanding of this has always been that you shouldn't speak with food in your mouth or be extremely loud at the table. I wouldn't say it's a cultural thing, though.
I dug in, took a bite. It was fish soup. Absolutely delicious. And you know, like a good guest, I wanted to compliment the cook. "This is delicious. Is it saffron? A perfect autumn soup." My BFF's brother looked surprised. My BFF's father hushed me. Big time. A really aggressive shish with a finger over his lips. And then he said, again, "Let the food keep us quiet." I apologized because I thought I had accidentally spoken with food in my mouth or something. But a few minutes passed and nobody said a word. Super awkward and weird, especially since they had been so talkative before. My boyfriend was also unusually quiet. After a few minutes I was too weirded out and asked about their day, and how nice it was that they invited me there and his mother did the hush thing. So awkward.
I think this is when it clicked. No speaking at all at the table.
Let the food keep us quiet. Really quiet. But this was a super awkward situation, and I couldn't deal with that. Imagine sitting at a table with 5 people, everybody eating soup looking dead serious. So I laughed, it just slipped out. I ended up being told off by BFF's parents that I was being disrespectful, etc. And if I didn't respect how their household worked, I could eat alone in the kitchen. We were eating in like a separate dining room. So I thanked them for the food and left to the hotel me and boyfriend stayed at. My boyfriend later told me that was an idiot move, that I should have just kept quiet or eat alone in the kitchen. I understand their family traditions and rules, but it was so weird. I just couldn't take it anymore. Was I being an idiot though? The top replies. Not the idiot. Your boyfriend should have warned you in advance that you weren't allowed to speak at the table in his family. And when it came apparent that you didn't know that was a thing, they could have calmly explained except of shushing you or sending you to the kitchen like a child. I would have left as well, to be honest. Second reply. I mean, I am going with not the idiot because 1. Your boyfriend didn't warn you beforehand. 2. Because when spoke they just hushed you instead of taking 10 seconds to explain the rule. I think you were put in an incredibly awkward situation and therefore didn't really know how to react. Also, I am someone who laughs when nervous or uncomfortable, so I too would have been in trouble. Also, I could not have dinner with a family who says absolutely no speaking at the dinner table. I would be incredibly uncomfortable only hearing other people's eating noises. The third reply. Not the idiot because your boyfriend didn't prepare you beforehand. This is such an uncommon situation that he should have absolutely given you a heads up before. Yes, you reacted a bit immature by laughing, but there are people who have that reaction when uncomfortable and you clearly were. Also, this is a wild way to host a guest. Fourth story. Am I the idiot for crashing my ex's mother's funeral and telling his children I'm carrying their sibling? My ex's mother and I were very close. I knew her from long before I started seeing her son. I saw her as my own mother. We kept close contact up until the end. When I found out she'd passed, I was devastated. Her funeral was yesterday and I went without receiving an invite. Didn't know you needed an invite to a funeral, but I guess this is important for later. If you didn't get it from the title, I'm pregnant with my ex's child. Unfortunate situation since he's back with his wife and things are tense, but that's the current situation. I was going there just for the funeral and to pay respect to an amazing woman who was treated me like her own child. I even sat at the back so as to avoid getting attention. However, attention came and my ex's wife came to me saying that I was not invited and crashing the funeral, so I must leave. Luckily my ex's older brother intervened and said that I was welcomed. The only problem is that after this he basically forced me to sit further in the front, literally put his arm around me and led me to the front despite me saying I was fine, to sit in the row reserved for family, directly behind my ex, his wife and their kids. While people were looking at the body, open casket, their kids saw me, they came to hug me and noticed my stomach was big, so asked if I was pregnant. Their mother butted in and made a snarky comment like, "Yes darlings, she just can't stop making them." Mind you, I only have one other child, so this comment was purely just to make me sound like some loose woman. But still, I bit my tongue. The youngest then asked if the child will have my red hair, and her mother scoffed and under her breath said something like "God forbid." So I was like, maybe, but your dad has brown hair, so the baby could just look exactly like you guys, since the baby would be their younger sister or brother. Their mother overheard this and immediately called the kids back to her. I left as soon as the funeral was over. I got a call later that night from my ex saying that I was an idiot for telling their kids about the baby without talking to them first, and told me to stay away from his family. Am I the idiot? Edit. There was no affair. They separated. We dated. They decided to get back together. We broke up. They both already knew about the pregnancy before the funeral. The top replies, "You are the idiot. I get the impression you were hoping for the drama you created. I've never heard of needing an invite either, but if you're a mother of two, you're old enough to keep your mouth shut instead of making snide comments to children." The second reply, "Everyone is the idiot. You had every right to go to funeral as a friend of the woman who died. You didn't have the right to tell your ex's children they are about to gain a sibling at their grandmother's funeral. Your ex's wife is hating the situation and she is taking that out on you, and that's not okay, because you did nothing wrong getting pregnant when in a relationship with your ex, planned or not. He is 50% responsible. She has every right to hate it because he is now linked to you for the next 18 plus years and she wishes he wasn't. But it does feel you said what you said as a dig back at the wife. I am not saying you shouldn't call her out on her behavior, but don't bring the kids into it.